Yes, sir. You're ready.
We'll go ahead and call, this is a special call meeting for the budget, which we'll have our regular city council meeting, we'll call it at 7 o'clock. First part this evening, for this part of the meeting will be discuss the budget. We'll be discussing most of it about utilities. Thank all of you all for working the 6 o'clock time period into your schedule ahead of time. I just felt like we had a fairly big agenda for the regular meeting, and out of deference for your all's time and the staff's time and maybe even the media's time, you all would be happy that we're not here till 9 o'clock crunching numbers. So that's why we decided to spend the first hour working on the budget. Last week we covered the utilities, the general fund, and I sent out an email. We would address any questions that you might still have regarding the general fund at the start of this meeting. So I would open up for questions if there's any more questions or comments about what we covered last week on the general fund.
I don't know if anybody, of course, I want to commend Daniel on his good report that he gave and how since he's taken over the recreation department, how things have been running fairly smoothly over there. But the major renovations that he had that brought forth about the community park, and talking to him recently about that and going through some things, I know his one list was pretty long, but I think everything he had on there was justified and probably needs to be done.
One thing I talked to Daniel about during that same thing is because some of it is ADA related, I'm hoping to meet with either Senator Higdon, Representative McCoy, and Congressman Guthrie, their office, just to see if there might be some funding for either ADA related projects like that, and also some funding for, also be combined with some recreation funding. I agree that the ADA is very important for that park, as well as the public restrooms.
I don't know if there used to be a trails grant or something that they used to have that we used to apply for. We got 2 or 3 times from the recreation department, through the Parks and Recreation.
I don't know if that's what qualify on that, but
I don't know. That's why I said it was one of them.
Daniel and I did discuss that we were going to look for those possible avenues for support, so that we wouldn't have to underwrite the entire projects. But
well, it's
we won't have that answer obviously by the time we have to vote on the budget. But I will be working on trying to get that funding if we can.
well, that's really a highly used. It's not really highly used. It's not been kind of checking on the last few weeks. It's a highly used facility. It probably needs.
The parking is very difficult, and also not just for people who might be in a wheelchair, just walking across the parking lots with a cane or a walker or something like that, and you can't get as many cars parked without the lines that would be at a paved parking lot that you could if you had that. So I think
even the people that don't have a cane or a walker, some people have a little bit of difficulty walking, have some issues as well, and I concur with Councilman Sheffield that that's a high priority, and we need to grant those things that he requested. I went by and I talked to him at length, and I think all those things will enhance that park, obviously, but it's going to make it more attractive for people that come here for those concerts and things like that. So it's going to be a win-win for the community.
Yeah, navigating that hillside even by itself is not easy for
Correct.
a lot of people without some ADA
Yes, sir.
work on it.
ADA compliance is very important. You must do it.
I think I did hear back from Councilman Jones. David had some questions about the breathing apparatuses for the fire department, and he's been doing some research and has met with the fire chief. So David, I'd like for you to kind of give some background as to the question, and I know you hadn't finalized what you're all working on, but give the council some background on your question and then where you're at today on the need for those apparatus.
Okay, the particular line item in question is to do with the SCBA's. The fire department is requesting a complete change-out, so to speak, of the self-contained breathing units that they use to enter engulfed structures to protect their breathing. Some questions came up, and I've got a little bit of experience just with diving and some things that have to do with that type of equipment. So I had some questions as to the 15-year mandatory life of the tanks that you deal with, and it's come to find out it's not really the life of the equipment itself or the masks or anything like that. It's the life of the tank that's in question. And in the budget or the request, they had cited, or Chief had cited last week, an OSHA standard that mandated that you destroy these tanks so that you can't use these tanks after 15 years. So did some research and could not find an OSHA standard that mandated that. Actually, OSHA is more interested in the testing and recertification of these tanks. So then there was an NFPA standard that was a question, so I did some research on the NFPA side of it. I'm a member of NFPA, so I have access to that website and can pull up a lot of that information. So I looked for that standard, and it's really looked at the same thing. It was just simply recertification of those tanks and that equipment. I met with the chief yesterday, and we kind of clarified where that came from. It was actually a DOT standard. The DOT, I have the particular standard here that it refers to. I think it's 1910.134. Actually, the DOT standard, that's the OSHA standard. But anyway, the DOT standard there is a stipulation in DOT standard for hazardous materials stored in tanks. And the reason it's DOT, it's if you're transporting those type of tanks. But that standard has been rescinded or has been superseded. I think in 2013, there's a new testing procedure for those tanks that actually can extend the life of the tanks to 30 years and beyond. So that's the nature of the research that I'm doing. I've found a company that does the testing called Digital Wave Technologies. I've contacted them. They haven't contacted me back with the particulars on pricing or anything like that. That's going to be the nature of the research. But it looks like, I mean, all the evidence that I can find would point towards that we can recertify this equipment and continue to use it safely and hopefully save the city that money.
Really good work, David, because that line item, is for 17 of those tanks, $119,000, and then you're looking at replacing the other half of them next year, but David's expertise might save us thousands and thousands of dollars. So I told David to continue with the research with Chief Walker and come back with a recommendation before we have our second reading, at least probably the first reading. We've got 3 weeks or 2 weeks before the first reading. That could be a major line item that we could save some money on.
And the chief has been very helpful. Our meeting yesterday, he had a lot of information for me and helped me go in that direction. So be happy to work with the chief on.
Good work there, Dave. Any other questions on the general fund stuff we covered last week? This isn't going to be a budget change. I'm just going to talk about a recommendation that I don't know that we may have to revise a municipal order at a later date, but in looking at the council training expenses and the travel and lodging line item under admin, I've reviewed some of the expenses that the council members have incurred so far this year, and if the same council members that did the training back in January in Lexington for elected officials were to go to the KLC meeting again, I think, is that in October? Yes. October, and, spend another couple of nights, go to training, have some lodging and per diem expenses. They may not have enough money in that $1,000 allowance to cover both events. So my recommendation is going to be to take a look at that municipal order and continue to have the $1,000 training allowance for council members. But when it comes to the annual KLC meeting, that lodging and that registration fee for a council member could come out of line item 6380, which is the same one we use for the other members of the city staff to attend KLC. So only for KLC would that line item be used for just for lodging and for registration for the annual KLC meeting. Then you could use your regular allowance for any and all other conferences or travel for the balance of the year. So it doesn't change the budget at all. There's, I think, enough money in that line item to cover any expenses we might incur there, if any. So, but I'll have Tim take a look at that municipal order. We may have to do some wording change, but that could come sometime between now and October. So, anything else on the general fund? If not, then let's move in. This is a general fund department, street department, but I carried it over to the nights because Jessica has a number of other departments in the utilities that she needed to be here for, so I didn't want her to have to spend 2 nights on all her departments. So we'll start, Jessica, and the rest of y'all with street, which is on page 14. And Jessica, if you may want to highlight some of the major issues like the sidewalk grant, sidewalks, and I think
Yeah. Basically, we've kind of talked about a lot of these items that are showing up in your capital or big items in our committee meeting. But for those who aren't on that committee, there was some money set aside that is listed as TAP grant matching funds, and we've talked about that, I believe, a week or 2 ago at one of our more recent council meetings, that we were in fact awarded the TAP grant in order to extend the walking multi-use path along 245, where it ends there in front of Nago Construction, on around towards the west side of town and going down Chambers Boulevard. So I think one of the reasons we got that, besides it being a really good project and good for the overall community, was that we were willing to put up money to fund a portion of that. We weren't asking for the grant to cover all of our expenses. So in the budget, there's $138,000 that's kind of our portion of that project for that overall project. I think what the grant allocated was around $552,000, I believe, was their portion that they agreed to allocate for our project. So that's a good start. You know, if we were that's $500 and some thousand that the community is not having to pull from our general fund, and will really benefit a lot of folks. Some other items in there in the budget, there's $110,000 that I have allocated in the capital improvement project to install and design a stormwater system along Flagey and up a portion of half block of North 4th Street. And that's to kind of alleviate some standing water that there's just not a lot of fall on that street. And there's not really a storm system to take that to. It's basically just all guttered, and our little flumes that we kind of create at the intersections, those little dips, kind of slows you down. It's just so flat through there, water stands, and even after we re-poured that apron, it still doesn't seem to, it's just not enough water to work with. So that money allocated is to move forward with that project, to carry that water from that intersection and direct it into an existing storm system down, that would eventually go along Stephen Foster and in that direction it dumps into the state highway storm system. Other funds were, even though they show up under the street budget, it's really, I believe, Tracy's done a job of allocating from other utilities and other departments to help pay for doing some work at the City Hall in the parking area. Similar kind of situation. They're the entrance to Broadway in the rear of City Hall. That entrance holds a lot of water. There's no real place for it to go. There's some pavement that's starting to really deteriorate rapidly just because water can't get out. And again, there's no real storm system to take that water to. You've got to go all the way to the corner of 5th and Broadway, and even that infrastructure is very shallow. So it's going to entail kind of a unique design in order to address what to do with the water. Plus, there's going to be a few challenges because of some of the green space areas that we would have tried to direct water to. It's near the, I guess it's the cable towers, you know, the receivers and so forth, and there's a ton of fiber optic lines running in that grass space. So we have to be really careful about where we can dig and what we can do, and we're going to be really conscientious and make sure that we work with all departments as we move forward with any type of design. But ultimately that number is a little bit high too, because I was hoping that I could utilize some green infrastructure practices and maybe some non-traditional, just instead of asphalting everything, having a asphalt parking lot on every square inch, we could utilize some other alternatives, like maybe some porous pavers, and maybe have a section of porous asphalt. Some areas where instead of just an asphalt island, we would create more of an aesthetically pleasing traffic island that has some landscaping and maybe tries to get some of that groundwater back into the ground. Have some purposes like that and use that as an example to the community as we have these requirements for stormwater. Because we're an MS4 community, we have somewhere to point in our own backyard. But this is an example, and this is what you can use, and this is how it works. So that's another just project that shows up in the capital improvements line items for street. But you'll see some allocation coming from other departments to help fund that improvement at City Hall. I guess, are there any specific questions that anybody has?
Okay, first of all, I'm going to just say that project on North 4th and Flagey is high priority. Just take my word for that.
I'm aware. I wanted to make sure I had the monies allocated.
Okay, and is the 110,000 going to cover what we need in order to get that project to completion? Or is that?
That's my goal. That's my goal, yes. We anticipate being able to, and again, barring any unforeseen utilities that we're not aware of, that are not owned and operated by the city of Bardstown, that have not been properly located until now, we believe that we can, again, it's not a large project scope. So we're not going a long distance, with this project. But I'm hoping that we plan to be able to do the construction with our in-house forces, which is why it's not needing, I hope that we don't need any additional money. That should be pretty conservative with our material costs to get this constructed.
Will any businesses located in that vicinity be adversely affected when we're doing the construction?
There could definitely be some inconveniences while we have portions of the lanes closed while we're constructing. Certainly when we're in the intersection there at Haydor's, we will likely be kind of a nuisance. But hopefully it will be fast. Right.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
but hopefully I don't think it's a project that's going to be going on for weeks and weeks at a time. I'm hoping once we get materials ordered and we can move fairly quickly.
Okay, start time on that.
I don't know. I would need to coordinate that with the street superintendent, with the public works superintendent.
Well,
long as it's
it
open
gets
on
slippery
Sunday
over there in the
morning.
wintertime too.
As long as it's open on Sunday
My
morning.
game plan is. It'd be nice if we could get it done before school starts.
That's only part of it. That's only part of it. Trust me.
May have to go a different route or walk a little further while we're doing it.
Okay. And just for general information, the city parking lot is something we delayed from last year, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right, just confirming that. Okay. Can we get a list of the sidewalks, the areas, and the the areas you're gonna be resurfacing and milling, so we have that information? Because you generally provide us with some kind of,
Yes, whenever we, before we go out for bid, when we do our advertisement for bid for resurfacing, that's the time we generally develop that list of streets. I haven't got the finalized list together yet for resurfacing for this coming year. But my goal, along with Ben's goal, is to get that list and get that bid sooner this year. I'm hoping, bar any other unforeseen demands on my time, but I'm hoping that we can try to get that taken care of, that list created and finalized in the upcoming weeks. So
We're
that,
hoping to get that bid out by July.
okay.
yeah, or in July. I have to wait till the budget passed, but yes. The goal is to advertise and get it bid in
We've
July.
got $500,000 set aside for resurfacing, and 240 and change, and that's coming from municipal aid, so only the out-of-pocket of the city is about 257 or so. But we need it every year, and we've got more and more streets that need attention, so.
And as
How
far
many miles of
as,
streets do we have?
how many miles? Oh, if you hadn't asked me, I probably could have been able to tell you.
I want to say 16.
I want to say it's over 80 miles. I'm trying to think. I could do some quick math real quick.
What, I mean,
87 miles,
87?
round about. As far as, as far as sidewalks go, you were asking about a list.
Yes.
I know Greg Ashworth has been working with evaluating all existing sidewalks that are needing to be, have work done, replacement sections. I don't have the overall study area because I believe we've done some of that in-house, and we've had Precision Concrete Cutting who goes in and does the cutting of some of the sidewalks where that's applicable. And we've got a large survey area that has been evaluated already. And we generally try to focus where it seems to be the most heavily walked, and start there, but I don't know
If you could
exactly.
prioritize that and just give us some information, is all I'm asking.
Yes.
On the drainage, help me with this. I think you told me that it might include doing some work in the alley between Broadway and the bakery. Is that correct?
Yes. There's actually a storm box, a storm structure in the alley, kind of behind where the barbershop is, I guess. I forget the name of that cross alley. But it's Medica Shopping Center, then there's the barbershop.
I'm on the other block. I'm up.
Are you, you're north on North?
Yes.
Okay, yes, we're looking at having the scope, and again, that'll be budget related, we're gonna crunch some numbers. I just recently asked the consultants to kind of get field work, and they're waiting for the survey crews to get freed up to go survey that section of the alley that would only go up the half block of North 4th, then possibly cut over to the cross alley in the back of,
The reason I'm asking this is because this happens to a lot of properties downtown. The roads and sewer, they just keep build up in sidewalks, and you got so many properties that are city level. There's 3-4 houses in there that have been suffering from that water for years. I know David Hall tried for years to get that alley so that water would not just dump into those 2 yards. And I was thinking that was going to remedy part of that.
it
was
should
to bring
help.
that.
It should help. The other thing that it should be able to allow property owners to do is have some place to take the water. Even though I can't go in the backyard and redirect because I may still be higher in the alley, as we go down 4th Street, it will allow them, if they wanted to do some improvements in their yard, they now have gravity on their side to direct it to the system out front and get permission to tie.
That's a good. That's good.
Okay, any other questions on the street? Okay. Let's go ahead and we'll move into electric, which is page 16. We've got staff here, Jeff Mills, is chaperoning a Boy Scout group in Alaska right at the moment. So it's a very important program for the local scouts. He's got an able group of guys here with us tonight. Home, Eric, Mike, and everybody think so. Any questions for these guys under electric? We got quite a bit of detailed sheet there, a lot of improvements that they've got to do, and a lot of the materials that they're going to have to be purchasing this year.
Mayor, this digger truck is the one we talked about last year that had to be rebid.
Yeah, that's carried over. It wasn't, the bid came in over budget last year, so we didn't order it, so it's been carried over. It'll be, I guess, won't be purchased until this next budget year at the bid price.
It takes almost a year to bid, or to build.
Yeah, it's over 300-day delivery on that truck. So we've carried it over to this budget year.
I noticed the salaries went down. Did you take somebody out of electric?
Eric Sheldon retired.
Eric Shepherd?
I think they're,
You didn't fill his spot?
As of right now, I think they're okay. They're gonna revisit that later.
I'm just kidding. Salaries don't usually go down.
Well, there was a apprentice position that they created last year, so whoever's been working on that would move up into his position.
and I think there's quite a bit of work, it's going to go on the Harton substation that is planned in this year's. Eric, can you comment on that?
Yeah, they're going to be, we're working with KU, who does all of our substation maintenance, working in tandem with they have their own substation at the Barton Distillery that then feeds our Barton substation that feeds most of Edgewood. They're looking at doing both changing out the primary transformer and also changing the voltage going from a 4 kV system to a 12 kV system. So we're negotiating and kind of working with Barton as far as we're with KU as far as where the work will be done. We were wanting to do some modifications to our substation, but we may end up, they may end up moving majority of the facilities, putting a transformer on our property to feed both us and then back feeding over to the Barton Distillery. So that's kind of in tandem with KU right now. So they're doing some cost analysis as far as where they can afford, sharing costs with us. So we budgeted, I think it was $250,000. So that's not really subject to change, but it's not a firm number. As far as what our portion would be towards a new transformer and a virtually entirely new substation.
Does it have to be upgraded based on the voltage change, or is it age of equipment?
Both. We had proposed originally to change out all the breakers. They were 1960s breakers, so we actually already own all of the new breakers. But then they came to us that Barton Distillery, between our load and Barton Distillery's load, we were pushing the primary transformer over its rating. So between that and us wanting some work done on our aging infrastructure on our side, the two things kind of came together in order to build a brand new substation with a larger transformer, and now it's just a matter of where. But my most recent understanding is that the small substation on Barton Distillery's property is too small for a new transformer for KU to build. So they would either need to build on our property or some other property on Bardstown City. So that's whether they're KU's kind of deciding that, working with.
So the substation on Barton's property is the one that you would have to upgrade the transformer?
Possibly. They're looking at either upgrading the existing transformer, or if it won't fit, relocating it to either a new property somewhere on Bardstown City or even on our facility, which is similar to our other two substations on our industrial sub on With the Report and our pool sub down by Boone's Butcher Shop have existing transformers on our property. So maybe similar to that setup.
If you do have to purchase this new transformer, does that mean that you have to have a backup that's identical to it on hand, or is that?
That's handled by KU.
Okay, so KU would furnish the backup. It's something that they would keep on their yard.
Right, we would, my understanding is contribute towards the new transformer, you know, depending on how they do their analysis between how much of it is due to Barton's growth versus our growth. And that difference would be funded by us in order to pay for it.
Okay. How many customers other than Barton's are fed by that one substation?
That one substation feeds about 800 to 1,000.
Okay.
Most of the Edgewood subdivision, everything south
Maple Hill
of,
and
south of Maple Hill, about everything south of Stephen Foster, east and west.
thank you.
And I think Jeff mentioned to me too that because of our new meters, now we're getting more timely reports on outages and also getting better information for service-related work. I guess the number of tickets that we have to service, I guess.
All right, and another thing in the budget is an outage management system, so we can take the meter data, and whenever we get the meters themselves report outages, and that data just kind of sits in the meter software. But with that system, it can go into this new system where it will then report to us, do calculations, and pinpoint where the outage is, so we can more quickly repair outages and shorter outage time.
Is that 7220, the technical equipment?
Yes.
Yes, there's.
Software. About 90,000, I think.
Yes. Is that something that you've received bids on from other, is that something pretty much you're locked in to take the software that matches your system?
We have an existing model that's in a MillSoft system, and we've received quotes from MillSoft. So there are other vendors that can use that same model and import it into their system. So we've received rough quotes from a couple, but we would, if it were to be approved, would turn that into an official bid, the purchase.
Any other questions on electric? We'll move into water, page 18. Back over to Jessica, I guess.
Any questions? Maybe we'll just skip ahead. Is there anything that jumps out at anyone that needs clarification?
Well, so you got $82,000 increase on your salary.
That potentially could be a couple of things. Some of that, and Tracy might be able to correct me or add to this, but some of the salaries have gone down a little bit in some other departments, and that's a result of our distribution, like our public works guys that work in multiple departments. And prior to this year, we've been allocating just a percentage of those folks to set departments. And in this last year, we've been monitoring on their timesheets what department they actually worked. How many hours did they work in the sewer department? How many hours did they work in street? How many hours did I work on a water main break? How many hours, they were actually tracking that in real time. So that data has been able to help us reallocate and actually put those salaries in places where they're actually working. It still may jump around, and it's a little bit of a moving target depending on where the workload is. So it's going to still be a little bit up and down. We're trying to predict that. Also, we did have an additional person that was approved in the budget, that we have an additional person at the water plant. So that could also add or take into account that additional money in the water department.
Engineering training.
And tonight I have an engineering training request for a new position in the budget, and that person is being allocated over street, water, and sewer. So that you might see that increase or showing up in your budget.
That was a question I had, you mentioned it. I'm reading the explanation here, but on the engineering training, can you go into a little more detail?
Yes, I need help. If you see all the projects and things that are going on in the street, water and sewer, and where those are originating from, that's my desk. And with the increase in the business is good, economic growth is occurring, which is spurring a lot of additional plan review. There's not that many people in my position that are doing all the plan review, and handling all the different things. And when the economy's slow, you can kind of juggle it, but I'm getting to the point where I think we could be much more efficient and do a better job getting back in touch with people, shorter turnaround times on plan review, and just managing the long-term needs and the shorter-term needs of the city for the departments if I have some help. It's getting to the point where I feel like we've kind of grown, as a community in our utilities, and that additional help would be greatly appreciated. I'm kind of the point like Jeff Mills, I need an Eric.
That's going to be split, you can see on your detail sheet, split that 3 ways between the 3 departments. We had some discussion about also how many site visits are required now in a lot of these commercial, particularly these commercial jobs, that has changed
Right.
the workload in your department as well.
Right, the level of and just permitting, land disturbance permitting, stormwater management plan reviews, any new development, any new construction project. It's not just whether there's a new utility main extension that needs to be reviewed and approved and allocated through my office, but it's also every single site plan that requires a grading plan has to have a plan review. And there could be up to 30 to 40 to 50 individual site plan reviews and over maybe 100 land disturbance permits issued out of my office. Now, granted, I'm not physically writing down and issuing every single permit myself. I do have an assistant, and we're all, between 3 of us, we're kind of juggling that workload. But again, those people are also doing every water, sewer, street utility locate that comes in. Every construction, when the weather starts warming up, we might get 10, 12, 15 utility locates a day and executing those work tickets. They're dealing with solid waste calls. So again, we're also dealing with solid waste stuff and leaf pickup and programs and trying to get that education out. So there's just a lot going on in our department, and again, as the economic and projects are growing, it takes a lot of my time to help see those projects through, and that all the permits are required, and have they got an as-built on their sewer, and is the new pump station up and running in the industrial park. All of those things are coming through my office on a day-to-day basis. So I really think we've kind of grown to the point where some additional help so that we can focus on some other planning for the city can be done rather than just the day-to-day emergency, the phone call coming in right now. I want to know where the sewer is on my property. That's taking up a lot of time, time that I need to be focusing on what's our overall capacity at the Town Creek plant, how much growth can we handle, moving forward in this section of the community. So just want to be able to do a better job for the community by having some help to allocate and locate.
This individual will be a certified engineer or someone who
I
has
think it's
not?
someone that's maybe out of school or maybe has their EIT certificate that we can kind of train in. I don't know that we need another PE right away, but someone that we can train to do and get introduced to what we do here at the city and the different departments. And back to your comment about construction sites, I forget, I don't have those statistics in front of me, but it is pretty amazing if you have 70 open construction sites, some of them are single lots, we still have to visit those sites at a minimum every 30 days. So if you think about that in a year's time, we might be going 560 site inspections. And if there's a problem, guess what? You need to write a notice of violation. Where does that come? my desk. So there's a lot of just general work that's occurring just to keep all the ordinances and utilities and programs moving and going.
Just as the water treatment plant, I know you and I covered this, but I can't remember on this one item. It's $175,000 to water treatment plant paint units 1 and 2, and then there's an
Yes.
under drain repair. What exactly is that?
Okay. There are 2 units, 1 and 2 are the oldest units that are still of the smaller original size. In 2010, we upgraded units 3 and 4 and the inner rings, and they were basically doubled in size. The older units, because there was a game plan to upgrade units 1 and 2, we deferred maintenance. We didn't want to spend a lot of money painting those units if in the next 5 years we thought we were going to upgrade those. Well, 5 years has gone by, 7 years has gone by, and we're noticing that our water sales are not keeping up with that initial jumps we were seeing in the late 1990s and the early 2000s and as we've gone. So we're holding pretty good. I'm not saying that we don't ever need to upgrade those units, but I don't see that happening in the next 5 years, which means my deferred maintenance is here. And I need to, underneath the filter units, there's a plate in the under drain, and there's a section where you kind of drain the water through. Underneath that, it's metal. So you've got steel plates that haven't been painted, and they're real barnacled and are to the point where we really need to do some repair work to them. They've not seen any attention since they were built in the 60s. So we really need to get in there and make some repairs so that we can get better efficiency out of the existing units. And then it does require, because they are steel plates, sandblasting them, we're making repairs, welding any holes, and then putting a coating on there that'll stand up to the chlorinated water and so forth. So basically just deferred maintenance that we were, again, we didn't want to spend it if we were going to be tearing it out and redoing it. But at this point, I think it's in our interest we really need to get it done and hold off of making that upgrade.
Anyone else have any other questions on the water department? All right, if not, we'll move on into sewer. That's page 20. I think the big item there, Jessica's our Rowland Creek project.
Yes.
We're on what page?
I'll do just
20.
a brief overview on that project. I wanted to make sure I had a placeholder in here. We've actually had requests for statement of qualifications out right now. I think the deadline is tomorrow, the 14th, for those statement of proposals to come in, or qualifications. What we need is to redesign and study the Rowland Creek trunk sewer. A lot of our growth in the last 5 years has occurred in the east end of town. We kind of thought 15 years ago it was going to occur to the west, but it's kind of really been occurring probably as a result of the 245 corridor being improved and some other things going on. It's occurred to the east in the Rowland Creek trunk line, which includes the Potter Shop pump station. In 2012, we had a force main project that upgraded that force main to the sewer plant. But we've had growth. There's a section of line from the Nelson County Industrial Park that's a 12-inch line, but there's about 6,700 feet that goes through that's only an 8. And then it dumps into a 12. And the watershed is very developed as it is. So the 12-inch needs to be upgraded. We've got lots of good data to provide any consultant that we do work with. We've been flow monitoring the area, doing point repairs to remediate as much inflow and infiltration from the system to buy us as much time as possible, but it really does need to be evaluated based on its capacity. And we have 2 distilleries that are going in that are one's already connected and in service, and then there's another one dumping into the same segment that is undersized, that is going to be undersized. So Thai Summit's going in, that wasn't even thought about 2 years ago. So there's just been a lot of growth that's occurred. Not to mention there's a whole new street that's been installed called Oben Way between 245 and Philly Atro Lane. Glenwood Drive is an area that's a light industrial in the same area that has had 2 businesses for 15, 20 years, and now there's 3 going up in a year. So there's just been a lot of spur. Potential for 2 hotels. There's a medical ambulatory care facility that's going in on this line, and we're still ticking. So the quarry is looking at a closeout plan that could potentially turn into some future development at some point, which will be going into this trunk line. So there could be, there's a lot of stuff we need to look at and make sure that we're sizing it appropriately for the future, and it could lead to future projects, even taking some of this load onto the other sewer plant. I'm not exactly sure what the final study is going to show, but in the past we've been, American Greetings was one of the first big projects that the community got in that end of town. And there's a lot of development has pump stations that pumps in to the Round Creek trunk line. There could be some getting off point where we need to have a separate trunk line for that Mill Creek and put the water or put the sewer sheds back in its actual drain line. So there's lots of different things. It kind of gets pretty complicated, but it's a good project and for our community to continue to grow, and it's something we need to do, make sure we're taking care of our infrastructure. And this won't happen overnight. There'll be easements and design processes, and there could be some potential for some grant money at some point, if we can get some economic development funds.
We've got, right now this is earmarked for reserves, utility reserves, which we've got to cover that, but we could also, not to pay for this year, but once the project's fully completed, we might end up going the KIA loan route.
Right. And I don't anticipate using this much this fiscal year, but in case there's some industry or economic push that puts us on a fast track, I wanted to make sure that the budget reflected that.
Then I think you've also got liner work at the Jerry Riley sewer plant, liner repair.
Yes, that's to repair the lagoon liner. There are some holes that have popped up in there that, as a result of, who knows, it could be the ducks and the geese that like to nest and hang out on the edge of the lagoons, and the sunlight hitting their feces, kind of eating away holes in that rubber liner. So that's the quote that we've got from that we received from the manufacturer on what it's going to cost to make those repairs.
We've got some more sewer repairs up in Henrytown, East O'Brien area that's carried over from last year also that needs to be worked on.
Yes. Hopefully we can get that project moving.
We might have time to get into, if there's any more questions on sewer, we might have time to get into cable before we get into the regular meeting at 7. Is that all the questions anybody has on sewer? If you look at cable, this year, it's on page 22, but cable and internet have been combined because there's, Tracy, you might want to talk to that point.
Well, prior to last year, there was always a large transfer from the internet over to cable to help support it. This current fiscal year, we tried to allocate a percentage, and when the bills would come in, I think everybody was just used to writing cable or internet, so that hasn't really worked. And it's to the point where let's just combine them and be done with it, because they both support each other. Most people get cable and internet, or you're using your cable department to build construction out in the field. for internet. So it's just ideal just to go ahead and combine it into one.
For this year's fiscal year 18, it's combined. So if you compare back to the 17, the numbers are going to look odd. I think Nicole, you requested an IT support technician. You want to
That's, yes. There's quite a few, we've added quite a few broadband subscribers. The wait time is increasing on the phones. We also have more departments are using technology. So we're having to spend more time. Other departments, water, sewer, all the different locations. And so we're not manning the phones as well as we'd like. We want to have a good, not just internet bandwidth wise, but we want to also have service that we can support and spend the amount of time that's needed per call to resolve their issue. And so it's just, as we grow, it's just one of those things we're needing. We need some extra help and phones.
Right now, are you staff is just 2 full-time and the rest are part-time?
Yeah, we've got 2 full-time and the rest are part-time. But we extend our office hours to support, after all the way up to 8 o'clock. And so we usually man that with the part-timers. But during the day, we still get quite a few calls.
These guys are constantly busy. If you've ever had an internet outage or a question, when you call, you want somebody to be on the other end of that phone to answer it. So this is a very big need that I can go this time I've been back. Put those guys are handling. Our cable internet customer base continues to grow every year. So we haven't grown the staff really commensurate with that growth, I don't think either. So I think that's a very needed position for that department. Anybody else got any more questions on cable and internet?
I see we have Pool Creek Road on there. I know that was an issue or something about the cost of getting that there.
It now fell into that, I think, was it $1,300 per household is the average cost? That's how the growth out there has now got to that point. It fits that model. That's why it's been added to the list.
I knew that was an issue, so
Yeah, I think they needed 16 houses, and that's where they're at. So I think the number is $1,347 or something like that per household. As far as the density that fits our model to extend, and that has just got to that point out there. Along with the other, the Shoe Lane, Greer Lane, Tom Greer Lane, and several others are on the list. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn out of the work session. Well, we've got about 5 minutes. We're going to go back to the budget at the end of the regular meeting.
So moved.
Need a motion to adjourn, second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Copeland. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll start the regular meeting.